I've often wondered what might compel more Christians to take personal responsibility to mitigate climate change. With all the scientific evidence we've been given, it doesn't seem to be a head issue, but a heart one. Scholar Sally McFaig offers both theological and ethical reasons for us to make much needed changes at an individual level. She writes this: as St. Augustine put it, sin is being curved in upon oneself rather than being open to God. In our ecological age, we now see that being open to God means being open to the other creatures upon whom we depend and who depend upon us. We do not meet God only in Jesus of Nazareth, because God is also incarnate in our world as the universal Christ. To love God by loving God's world has meant different things to different people in different times. For us, it is epitomized by climate change, the central crisis of the 21st century. Put simply, climate change is the result of too many human beings using too much energy and taking up too much space on the planet. And through excessive energy use and its accompanying greenhouse gas emissions, we are changing the planet's climate in ways that will make it uninhabitable for ourselves and for many other species. And this is a strange crisis to face. It does not have the immediacy of war or plague or tsunami. Rather, it has to do with how we live on a daily basis. The food we eat, the transportation we use, the luxuries and long-distance air travel we permit ourselves. We are not being called to fight an enemy. Rather, the enemy is the very ordinary life we ourselves are leading. Yet for all its presumed innocence, this way of life lived by prosperous people is both unjust to those who cannot attain this lifestyle and destructive of the very planet that supports each and every one of us. What then would be an appropriate ethic for 21st century people, and especially for well-off religious people? One of the distinguishing characteristics of many religions is some form of self-emptying. Often it takes the form of egolessness, the attempt to open the self so that God can enter in. In the Christian tradition, kenosis, or self-emptying, is seen as God being in creation, the incarnation, and the cross. In creation, God limits the divine self, pulling in, so to speak, to allow space for others to exist. In the incarnation, as Paul writes in Philippians, God emptied the divine self, taking the form of a slave. And in the cross, God gives of the divine self without limit. Could we live and move and have our being in the universal Christ, participating in the insight and power of God incarnate in the world as we deal with the basics of existence, space and energy, so we can live in radical interdependence with all other creatures? We are not alone as we face this challenge. The universal Christ is in, with and for the world as we struggle to deal with climate change.
For the beauty of the sun.
We pray for the waters of the world, that they may be restored to health and filled with bountiful life.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for the earth's soil, that its richness be protected to assure abundant harvests for all.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for all creatures who share earth with us, that their beauty and diversity will be preserved.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for our brothers and sisters around the world, who have been and will be directly impacted by the effects of climate change.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for future generations. May they learn from our environmental irresponsibility and be good stewards, living simply and in harmony with all your creation.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for all human beings, that we will be filled with a spirit of concern for the future of our environment. Bring an end to the exploitation of the earth's scarce resources, and live as responsible stewards, protecting and respecting this gift of creation God has placed in our hands.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
We pray for the wisdom for decision makers in and around the world, that wealthy nations may make amendments for the harm they have done to the environment and find creative and just solutions to protect all of creation.
God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.
For all the intentions we hold silently in our hearts, God of creation, help us to respect and renew the earth.